Hi, I'm Ashley, self-proclaimed resources nerd and staff member at Futures Northwest. Today's guest is the wonderful Ryan Simonis from Whatcom Community College to talk about accessing food resources and benefits. Ryan will be answering questions about how to navigate these systems and dispel some common myths around accessing food benefit programs. Welcome, Ryan. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
So first off, I would love it if you can tell me a little bit about yourself and about the BFET program.
Yeah, so real quick about me. I grew up in the general area, so over in Anacortes. So went through high school there and then went to Eastern Washington University on the east side of the state for my undergrad, mainly because of the affordability. But super glad for that experience and super glad I chose that school. Got a lot of good connections with professors there. So yeah, I got 2 bachelor degrees, one in sociology, one in geography. And before going to college, I didn't really know you could get degrees in those things, but it's all social sciences and who we are as people and cultures. And so from there, graduated, served a year as an AmeriCorps in volunteer service back in Anacortes. And then moved up here for my current role, working at Whatcom Community College.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so at Whatcom Community College, I work out of the BFET office. So BFET, and it stands for Basic Food Employment and Training. And so that BFET program isn't necessarily unique to Whatcom Community College. There are BFET programs in all 34 community and technical colleges in the state, as well as a whole bunch of different government agencies and nonprofits. And so what BFET is it's additional support for people who are receiving or eligible to receive food benefits to either pursue employment or training. And so there's kind of the employment side, focusing on job search, resume building, that kind of stuff. And then there's the training piece, which education counts as training because you're getting trained up to be a better worker and whatever that's going to be. Yeah. And so BFET programs in the community technical colleges offer wide variety of supports around tuition assistance, textbook assistance, depending on the program, transportation assistance. If your program needs specific items like scrubs for some of the medical stuff, potentially the BFET program can help with that. So there's a lot of like financial assistance potentially that BFET programs can help with around education. So really there, like I said, it's just an extra support for those that are receiving food benefits.
That's fantastic. I didn't know about all the other things. That's wonderful.
Yeah, lots of extra things that the common person doesn't necessarily know, or a lot of people don't even know that BFET exists. I didn't until I got into this role.
Right. It's one of those, I wish I had known that existed earlier kind of things. Yep.
Yeah.
So can you give me a little bit of an overview about how someone might qualify for and access food benefits as a student?
Yeah, so specifically as a student, that's why it's helpful to have a little guidance. It gets a little tricky. Yeah. So to qualify for food benefits in general, the things that the state agency that is in charge of the program, so DSHS, the main things they're looking at is your income and the size of your household. And so household is specifically talking about who is in the household that will be consuming food that you're buying with these benefits. And so they look at many other things, your expenses, your housing costs, et cetera, but really they're just looking at your income and your household. As a student though, the reason I said it gets a little tricky is because technically there's like a rule that students either need to be working at least 20 hours a week while pursuing education. They need to be work study eligible, or they need to be enrolled in a BFET program. So that's where BFET is super important for food benefits, is that as long as you're connected and enrolled in the BFET program, you don't need to worry about like doing this extra 20 hours a week of work while you're trying to pursue education on top of things. So that piece is particularly important for students during the pandemic. There's also been an additional rule put into place where when you fill out the FAFSA and you get that number, that expected family contribution, if you get a 0 EFC, then you can use that as documentation as well for your eligibility for food benefits. That wasn't really a thing before the pandemic. And so just around that to be noted is that's really only at the community and technical college, the BFET program. There's no BFET program at the four-year universities and colleges. So that's where some people may get hung up as students in that if they are going after a four-year college, you'll have to qualify based on those other rules. There won't be a BFET support there for you.
Right. That makes sense. Okay.
But so that's what they're looking at. But the actual application process is you can either call to do the application, you can do it online, WashingtonConnection.org, or you can request a paper application. Takes a little bit longer, but if that's the best way that it would work for you, you can also do that.
That's cool that there's multiple ways to do it. What are some common myths or misconceptions about accessing food benefits?
Yeah, so probably the most common thing there's two common things that I run into. One is, especially students, they don't think that they would qualify for benefits. So I spoke about like income being a huge thing that DSHS is looking at. So a lot of students, they're like, oh, I make too much, or I have too much income from this thing or whatever. And that may be the case for some people, but as a student, especially if you're going full time and you're only working part-time, that's not necessarily the case. So a lot more people qualify for food benefits than they realize. So I would encourage to look up those income guidelines based on your household to see if it, at least in the rough ballpark, it looks like you might qualify, because you might be surprised. But of course, the only way to know for sure is to go through the application process. The other kind of, not necessarily myth, but belief that people have is that somehow them using food benefits takes it away from someone else. So there's this idea that I'm in need, but someone else is in greater need and they need the benefits more than I do. So I see people who aren't necessarily willing to take the benefits because of that reason. The best way I've explained it to people is that throughout your life, you'll be paying taxes that support these government-funded social services, such as these food benefits. And so throughout your life, or before this point in time, you've paid into this system. And so regardless of whether or not you're taking out the benefits, they'll be there. So you might as well use them, and they help stretch your budget. And especially right now with the pandemic, really helps.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are big. And those are also things that I've heard as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I'm curious about the advice that you'd give students or families who might find this system difficult to navigate. Are there particular sticking points to be aware of in the application process?
Yeah. So in terms of like getting stuck, so if it's because it is an application, and sometimes applications aren't necessarily the most clear. If you're doing it online, the online application is pretty good about having on each page of the application little help boxes that you can click on that clarify what a word means or what they're really asking for. So there's that to look out for. If you want like a little assistance filling it out, if you call Opportunity Council, they can walk you through and complete the application with you over the phone. So that's something. And then also, if you're a student currently and you are thinking of going to a community or technical college, I would just reach out to the BFET program, because they're really good about navigating, getting people onto food benefits in order to enroll in BFET. So it's not always get enrolled in food benefits and then go to BFET. A lot of times it's the other way around. If people go to BFET, then they get benefits, then they get enrolled into BFET. Yeah. So the BFET office of whatever school you're going to, if it's a community and technical college, would be of a good help in terms of navigating the process.
Yeah.
In terms of like common sticking points, the big thing I would bring up is that applying for food benefits is more or less a two-step process. So there is the application piece where you're providing all your information, but then after you submit the application, it's up to you to then call in to do a phone interview to basically verify all the information that you provided. So you're not done with the process after if you're doing it online, click submit. It's not done there. You do need to call to do the interview, the follow-up interview. And then a lot of times they'll require you to submit some kind of additional documentation. So usually that's like pay stubs for jobs you've had, or rental leases to show what your monthly cost for living is, stuff like that. So usually there'll be some kind of documentation they want from you, and they can't finish reviewing your application until they get that documentation. So that makes it sound super daunting, but it's usually not too complicated. But those are the points of like, some people don't realize that once you submit, there are usually a couple extra steps to do. Yeah, that's what I'd say about that.
And are there particular times of day that are better than others to make that phone call?
Yes, I was going to say that and then I forgot. So thanks for bringing that up. So usually, so calling DSHS, because it is a state agency, and so they have their main line that deals with everyone in the state. So as you're indicating, there are times that get busier. So usually I encourage people to call earlier in the day. So if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head, their phone lines open at 8 a.m. And so as close to 8 a.m. as you can call based on your schedule and your life is better, because more likely than not, you'll be able to get through pretty quickly, as opposed to in the afternoons, gets a little bit more clogged up and you might be on hold for a bit.
Yeah. And by a bit, like sometimes it can be hours. So
yes,
I mean, it's totally worth it to set your alarm. Make the call.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. I had another question that I'm just thinking, for students who are living with roommates, how do they navigate that on the application?
Yeah, so that's why I kind of was trying to be particular with my words when I said household earlier. Because so DSHS is particular about who they include in your household. So it really is, if you were given this money, this benefit to purchase groceries, who would be using those groceries effectively? So occasionally I live with a roommate. Occasionally my roommate has some of my food, but I'm definitely not cooking their meal every night. That's not what's happening. So if I were to be applying for food benefits, I wouldn't include them in my household. Because similarly,
sharing the food.
Yeah. And because similarly, we're not sharing income. She is, I'm not getting anything that she's making, and she's not getting anything that I'm making. So it's really looking at where's the income coming for you, and where is that food benefit going to be going? And if it's just you, great. It might be a sibling, it might be a parent, it might be a child. So there's many. The household can be ranging from one person to 10 or more. But the household is really looking at who's going to be using those benefits.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. So are there other food resources that you would recommend folks check out if they're interested in getting some support in this way?
Yeah. So the cool thing about living in Whatcom County is that there is a pretty good resource, the Whatcom Asset Building Coalition. And so they're a good group that collects a bunch of this information for people to use. And so one of the pieces that they keep very up to date is their food resource information, which you just brought up. So this piece of their website, that food and meal resource guide, they update it fairly regularly. And so that's going to go over any of the food banks in Whatcom County. That's going to go over any of the hot meals that are available in the area. And I believe it's in English and Spanish if you go further down. That second,
yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there we go. That second link will just go over the food benefits that we've been talking about. It goes over the application process. It goes over specifically right now with the pandemic, what that looks like, because it is a little bit different right now, mainly because there aren't any in-person services. But yeah, so if you need a refresher on what to do or some guidance around it, this is a good place.
And is this that phone call that you were the phone number that you were mentioning earlier?
Yeah, so that's specifically Opportunity Council's number, if I'm looking at that number correctly.
Yep.
So that would be the line you'd call if you wanted some assistance in applying.
Great. Awesome.
So there's other links there, but don't need to go over every little one. But yeah, that's usually where I send people, just because they do keep it very up to date, and I like that they keep that food and meal resource guide up to date.
Yeah.
And that's really where I send people. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, was there anything else you wanted to share with us today?
Trying to come up with stuff. I guess the only thing I would really say is just if you're having any kind of inkling of like, I might qualify, I might not, I don't know, apply. It does take a little bit out of your day, but usually not too much, depending on how big your household is. I'd say average person 20 to 30 minutes, maybe 40. It's not super extensive, at least that initial application piece, just because the worst that they'll say is no. But if they do say yes, then you're getting this, like I said, it's extra bit of money that goes into your budget. And so especially right now with the pandemic, benefits have been maximized most months. So you're getting a good chunk of money that can go towards groceries and food. And so the money that you're not spending on that can go to other pieces of your budget, which really helps people out. So I always encourage people to just apply because, like I said, worst they can say is no.
Right. Absolutely. And if they do say no, you can hop back over to that Whatcom Asset Building Coalition website. And there's other ways that you can access food, like our food bank, right? So there's more, even if it is a no. So
yes,
I appreciate you, Ryan, and I appreciate the wisdom and the resources that you've shared with us today. And definitely for more details on what we talked about with links, I'll include the Whatcom Asset Building Coalition website in the show notes for you all to access. And remember to subscribe and like this channel for more resources and information to take your next step in life with confidence. If you want even more great resources, you can check out our website at futuresnorthwest.org. Thanks for watching. Bye.